Hello, CEE Chats family. I'm your host, Ray, and we're here to interview David Lewis Peart. And you might have noticed him from TEDx Talks and many other social platforms. And please give a warm welcome to David Lewis Peart. So tell me about yourself.
Tell you about myself. I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a human services counselor, I'm an educator.
Okay, so what in your upbringing brought you to do all of these things?
Professionally, I think a lot of what brought it was my life experience. So I was, like so many, raised in a single parent home for a long while. Not for all of it, but for a significant amount of it. And then a part of my life I lived in children's aid. And it was in there that I sort of discovered that I was being supported by some really amazing people, some amazing workers. And I felt like I wanted to be that for somebody else.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I grew up and I got an opportunity, I tried to give back in the way that I feel like I received. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what was that opportunity?
I completed high school. I wasn't really expecting to complete high school. I dropped out in grade 11 to work at McDonald's, to flip burgers.
That coin, you know?
To make some money, but also to figure myself out. Yeah. You know, I had a really complex childhood, and I dropped out to hang out on the corner and to be with my friends, and I wasn't making always the best choices.
Yeah.
And I was given an opportunity to go back and finish high school, and when I did, it sort of got me really interested in being able to support other young people or other people like myself who had had difficult upbringings and who had made choices. And so I ended up going back to school and studying counseling.
So what community do you usually like to serve? Would you say the Black community, or you're open to helping anybody?
So I've worked in all kinds of parts of community work and social services, but the majority of my career has been Black families, children, youth. I sort of feel like I started where I was. You know, you can't
and you
go.
can connect with those people the best, right?
It was my own backyard. It's my community, and so I started there.
Do you think people should really work hard, young people work hard to speak well and do public speaking?
To speak well and do... So I think, yeah, public speaking is an art, for sure.
Yeah.
Some of us do it well, others don't. But I think before even thinking about public speaking as an art, I think you should figure out, what is it that you have to say, you know?
And what people you'd like.
First, I think it's what's the story that you have to tell before you even think about anybody else. What is it unique to you that you have to say?
Yeah.
And then think about who are the folks that likely would want to hear what it is that you have to say. But the first step, I think, is figuring out what is it that you particularly have been put here to share, you know?
So what things socially do you think hold back the Black community?
What kind of things hold us back?
Yeah, you said you dropped out of school.
Yeah.
Wanted to work, wanted to make money because we didn't grow up with a lot of things. So instead of going to school, it was like, oh, let me work instead, right? I feel like a lot of people go through that.
So I think, things like anti-Black racism are real. I think that impacts us. I think poverty are things that impact some of us. Various intersecting kinds of oppressions and discriminations impact us. So we're not only Black, so you might be Black and a woman, you might be Black and queer, Black and disabled.
Yeah.
We hold a multiplicity of experiences in us that hold with them different kinds of challenges. But I think that the sort of overarching umbrella is that we live in a society that isn't necessarily set up
for us to succeed.
For Black people to succeed, you know?
Would you say that your TEDx talk was your peaking of your career?
Maybe it was the peaking of my career, maybe. It was a while ago. But I think it was one of the first times that I had an opportunity to share in a large way some of the things that I learned, not only professionally or through school, but at a point in my life, right? So I did my TED Talk maybe 2013, and at 2013 my life was shifting in an interesting way. I was finishing up school, I was making a career transition, I had ended a marriage. There had been a lot of transitions that were happening for me at that time, and I think that the TED Talk was my chance to sort of just
break free and really speak.
I think respectability politics in Black communities is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean there's a way that we sort of understand what it means to achieve. And so many of us who have stories often have stories of, started from the bottom, now we're here.
Right.
For me, my TED Talk was at a time where I had come from the bottom and had been here and hit my own bottoms again, And I was really, I think in that, attempting to be transparent about the fact that it's not a linear process.
Yeah.
And that's the lie that we get told, is that, if you do these things in this way,
it's gonna happen.
It's all gonna, and you're gonna be good,
yeah.
and it's done. Not recognizing that you can get all kinds of things in place, and life happens. And no one of us is immune from life. And so, in 2013, I was very much sitting in a place of what does it mean to be David?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that I want to share? And what was interesting about that time too was that the research I was doing was on the experiences of young Black men, particularly young Black queer men.
Yes.
I myself was a young person and a young adult doing that work. And so some of the things that I had learned from them were things that I was finding out for myself. That
Do you find it harder that because you were young, Black, and queer, that it's harder for you to get work, harder for people to understand what you were going through? No?
No. Being Black and queer didn't do me a disservice professionally. In fact, for a long time, it really served me really well. There were so few of us speaking out about being both Black and queer and doing that work. But sometimes what ends up happening is that you become sort of like a token. You become the sort of the be-all and the end-all for this thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you go, okay, well, you're Black, so you speak to what's going on in the Black community. You sort of stand as the avatar for all things that. And that's a heavy load to carry for anybody, right? And that's why it's really hard. White people don't have to think about representing all of white community.
Yeah.
Black people often...
I feel Black people, sometimes we could be very harsh and have harsh opinions on each other.
For sure.
Right? So do you feel like the Black community was very supportive of you being Black, gay, and queer?
I think early in my career, because there were so few folks doing it, so few folks speaking about being Black and queer in a public way and doing work around that, I think in the early days, people didn't know what to make of that.
How to take it?
I think over time, people's ideas shifted. There's a lot more people now standing in their truth as Black gay people, as Black queer people, as Black trans people. Mm-hmm. But at that time in the city, there was only a handful of us, young people, doing that kind of work. And that's hard. That's for me, reflecting back, I realized that it was a challenge to be a spokesperson. Mm-hmm. Even though if you had asked me at 20, 21, 22, if that was a challenge, I said, what do you mean a challenge? I get an opportunity to be interviewed and have great conversations with people. But looking back now, I realized, wow, I was a kid who was doing work in my community while I myself was going through my own work, and I learned, I think, sometimes the hard way that sometimes leaders need leadership.
Right. Would you say throughout your career, what are your biggest pet peeves about public speaking?
I think sometimes my pet peeves about public speaking, particularly when being called to talk about Blackness or queerness, or is expectations of me having all of the answers. Being able to sum up a whole community experience in just 20 minutes. There you go. It's like, bam, tell me what it means to be Black. Okay, cool. I sometimes find that challenging.
What would you give to somebody who wanted to be a public speaker? Any tips?
Any tips?
And things that they shouldn't do?
Listen. I think sometimes when you have something to say, you're so caught up in the saying that thing that you don't really take into account that you're with other people. I think what makes a good speaker, like a good teacher, like a good worker, is someone who's able to listen just as well as they're able to speak, you know? So notice, what is it that you're saying right now? What are you interested in? What is it that, you know, you bring to this conversation? Like, I should be able to draw just as much from you as you are drawing from me.
Yeah.
You know your audience, right?
Right. So when it comes to making money doing public speaking, how do you go about that?
Making money.
Yeah.
So I think early into my public speaking life, I did a lot of things for free. That's changed, you know. Now I will accept money and other forms of remuneration for my time. I think everything requires exchange.
Yeah.
You know, anywhere that
I think any career, right?
and
A lot of people do
listen, you
things for
can't go to
free.
nobody's house and not come with something in your hand, you know? Like, there's an expectation in all relationships that there be an exchange.
Yeah.
I think that as speakers, as professionals, that we should expect there be some kind of exchange. And different exchanges are for different environments, right? And so
Right.
I'm doing this here because I'm interested in supporting the work of CEE.
Right.
I don't expect necessarily anything
any
from that.
reimbursement, right.
But you're gonna invite me to go speak at a bank?
Of course you need some money.
Maybe I ask for some money. Do you know what I mean? And so there's an awareness of where it's appropriate and what's appropriate. And sometimes it's, listen, David, I really need you to do this thing. I don't have anything to offer, but I can help you out with, you know, it's just getting into the energy of reciprocation.
Yeah, you do
you know,
for me, I do for you. Simple.
in some way, you know.
When do you think you should ask for money?
I hate talking about money.
Yeah, I
And
don't
it's
either.
something I'm still learning about. I really don't like talking about money, especially because most of the things that I do are things that I care about. But usually after all the details, the time, the place, the location, so I'm just, what's the budget? what's your budget? And then I go from there.
All right, well, is there anything else in your professional career that you'd like to share with the audience?
I think a word of encouragement for people who are interested in getting out and speaking is realizing that you have something worth saying. Every single body on this planet, you don't have to be a professional speaker of any kind, but everybody has a story worth telling. And once you find your story, you'll find the right ears to tell,
Listen.
you know?